It's Thursday, the 3rd of June 2021. Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Headlines, the business news you need in just 5 minutes. I'm Sean Aylmer. In today's headlines, Australia's economic growth rate beats forecasts, and the economy is now bigger than before the pandemic. Plus, Melbourne's lockdown extended for another week after the state recorded 6 community-transmitted cases yesterday. The chair of Tesla says Australian commodities can be part of the electric vehicle boom if the government plays its part. And guess where the top 10 house price rises come from? Our lead story today, the Australian economy is now larger than it was before the pandemic, after official March quarter growth figures showed a 1.8% expansion during the 3 months. Private sector investment drove the growth, which was better than most economists had forecast. The Bureau of Statistics figures triggered a spike in the Aussie dollar, and the S&P ASX 200 hit a record high. The economy expanded at its fastest clip in 50 years over the last 3 quarters, which isn't totally surprising given it went into its worst downturn in a century at the beginning of 2020. The outlook depends very much on the rollout of the COVID vaccinations and then on the reopening of international borders to students, immigrants and travellers. Across the board, the numbers were good. Business and households were spending more, even though during the quarter the federal government pulled back on some subsidies. The Australian economy is in good shape. Not quite rude health, the labour market still has some way to go, but not far off it. The housing market is buoyant. Global economies are also accelerating as the vaccination rollout continues around the world. And monetary and fiscal policy here and overseas is ultra easy. If you have a job, it may well be the best of times right now. In overseas news, global meat supplier JBS, which owns slaughterhouses in Australia, could be shut down for a prolonged period as a result of a cyber hack. It has helped push up already high beef prices in China, the world's biggest buyer of beef. Russian criminals have been blamed for the ransomware attack, and it brings to the fore the issue of food security for different nations. In an amazing story from Wall Street overnight, AMC is a listed stock on Wall Street and a massive cinema chain. Its shares were briefly halted overnight after the company's share price jumped 93% following promises of free popcorn and special screenings to investors. It sounds ridiculous, but it's part of the meme trading frenzy going on at the moment, driven by the huge number of retail investors that have entered the market since the beginning of COVID-19. Retail traders now own 80% of AMC's stock, with 3.2 million new individual investors buying into the group on the back of popular messaging boards such as Reddit. Other meme stocks such as Bed Bath & Beyond and BlackBerry also did well overnight. And staying in the only in America category of stories, Anheuser-Busch, maker of Budweiser, has promised a free beer for every adult American if the US can meet President Joe Biden's target of 70% vaccination by July 4. Apparently, it would be the biggest beer giveaway in history. Okay, it's a marketing stunt, but it certainly got me. Locally, the lockdown in Melbourne has been extended for another week after the state recorded 6 new community-transmitted COVID-19 cases yesterday, one of which was an aged care resident. But the lockdown in regional Victoria will end tonight. People will not be able to travel between the city and regional Victoria, and QR code entry will be extended to supermarkets and large retail outlets across the state. Acting Premier James Merlino announced more than $200 million in support yesterday, including grants of up to $5,000 for general businesses, and emphasised that the best way to handle coronavirus was to get vaccinated. Thus far, Canberra has not responded to calls for more financial assistance for Victoria. New South Wales has also been caught up in the most recent outbreak, with 250 people isolating at home after being deemed close contacts of a Melbourne man who visited the south coast of the state, Gundagai and Goulburn, last month, when he may have been infectious. The chair of Tesla, Australian Robin Denholm, yesterday said the electric vehicle maker would soon consume more than $1 billion worth of local lithium, nickel and other critical and rare earth minerals annually for its electric motors and batteries. But she warned that Australian governments, miners and manufacturers needed to speed up innovation to shift the country from an exporter of fossil fuels into a new energy superpower. Woolworths has launched its own standalone payments business known as WPay. It will offer payment processing capabilities to other businesses and take on the big banks. It's part of Woolworths boss Brad Banducci's strategy of diversification, generating alternate income streams. Woolworths is already the 5th biggest processor of card payments in Australia, behind the big 4 banks. Thermal coal prices have hit a decade high after a number of mine disruptions globally. Prices for thermal coal from New South Wales, mostly to be used in power stations, have more than doubled in the past 12 months, helped by demand from China, India and Vietnam. And finally, I mentioned yesterday that house prices surged last month to record levels. CoreLogic has come out with a list of the best and worst performing suburbs over the past 3 months. The good news for Sydney homeowners was that the top 10 were all in that city, mostly on the North Shore. The bottom 10 all came from Western Australia. That's the Fear and Greed business headlines for today. Make sure you hit follow so you get it every morning. And if you'd like more detail and more stories, search for our longer daily podcast called Fear and Greed. We also release a daily interview. Today we're talking to EY Chief Economist Joe Masters about the GDP data and where the economy is heading. I'll be back later with the afternoon market report. I'm Sean Aylmer. Have a great day.